startup isn't a real business until it's generating its first pound of revenue. I'm actually Tate. I left school at 16 and since then I've started over 19 different companies. Most of them failed, but 3 of them changed my life forever. And I'm going to share with you some of the tips and tricks and lessons I've learned that I wish I knew 20 years ago. Today I'm here with Chris. He was my co-founder in my last business, Mina, and Chris helped turn an idea in my head into a multi-million-pound business. And today we're going to share with you some of the things that we learned about how we got to our first pound of revenue. So Chris, let's talk about the biggest mistakes that most founders make right at the start of the journey.
There is a tendency to either over-complicate or a tendency to want to build something polished or shiny that solves the problem you think you exist. What I learned a lot from you when we started Mina is there's a tendency not to talk to people. Like you spent years before Mina talking to every man and their dog about the industry and about the problem. And I just think there's this kind of slightly strange tendency for people. They don't want to put themselves out there and actually speak to the people whose problem they're trying to solve.
They want to keep their idea very close to the chest.
They do, they do. And they want to think about the nice shiny thing they're going to deliver rather than the problem that they're actually go and execute. And I also think there's a tendency not to want to hear some of that feedback. If they've got a vision of a perfect solution in their head, maybe if they start talking to people, it erodes what that actually ends up being like. And I think some people are quite visionary and quite focused on the shiny thing they want to build.
Okay.
Whereas the reality is they've got to solve a real problem that people are willing to pay for.
So number one really is like understand the problem, right? Is this a problem?
Yeah, understand the problem. Understand that, some of the best founders I speak to, they're trying to tackle a problem that's quite close to them or they've experienced firsthand. That drives them and they have real industry experience because they know that problem inside out. The problem is that's not necessarily a problem for everyone else. And even if it is a problem for everyone else, are people going to pay for it? Are people actually going to put their hand in their pocket? I think you see a lot that what people are building is features on a product that exists already, not a product in its own right. The most important first process is, for me, is it a problem that other people are actually experiencing?
Yeah.
When we met prior to Mina, you started many businesses, but we built Mina together. You already had a pretty good idea around, and it wasn't just one problem. We had 2 or 3 that we were potentially looking to address. But how did you understand that problem? What did you do to actually go out and find out that these were the challenges faced by the industry? Yeah,
so actually interesting. So I suppose when we think back to Mina, the pain that I thought we were solving was that people were buying electric vehicles but didn't really have a sense of how much they were going to cost to run or charge. So the initial idea was let's solve that by giving people, consumers, this fixed price bundle that says you can charge your car as much as you like, a bit like your mobile phone, for this fixed price every month. So that seems like great, that solves that problem. So then we go and try and talk to customers and talk to partners. So we were thinking, right, how are we going to sell this? Let's sell it through car dealerships. And kind of what came back was actually people know it's cheaper. And this idea of having this fixed price just makes it feel more expensive.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like, no, we know it's cheap, so we don't really want to pay this price where we know there's margin. We'll just pay what it costs.
And it's almost better that those energy costs are on your energy bill, because that feels cheap as well, right? Rather than going to a petrol pump and seeing the price you pay every time.
Yeah. Going back to this understand the problem, we didn't build that.
Thank God.
Thank God we didn't build that. Yeah. So we killed this idea. But what that led to, what talking to customers led to, was there's a problem that we didn't even know at the time. And so we started this whole business with the idea that this is a pain for consumers, and that led to actually businesses have a problem with paying the charging costs for their fleets of electric vehicles that are on the road.
Yeah, but for you to get to that point and to start to get that understanding, like I speak to lots of, and a fair amount of younger entrepreneurs who are just kind of starting the journey. That's a lot of what we do at Trove. But be specific, like what, if I've got an idea that let's say is B2B and I want to focus on a specific problem in a specific industry, how do I get them to talk to me about their problem?
So I think, so if we're breaking this down into stages, so I think we've got stage 1 is clearly understand the problem, right? So that's what we're talking about. Like you said at the start, you've got to speak to people that could be your potential customers, because you were saying to me earlier before we started filming that you had somebody who'd got an idea and they just wouldn't share it with anybody.
No.
It's almost like the idea is valuable, but ideas are worthless, really. Like, anybody can have an idea. And if you look at the successful businesses, from the outside looking in, people go, oh, Facebook, you know, what a great idea. It's not really a great idea. It's a great execution, right? It's people that know how to take the idea and turn it into reality. And the reason they're able to turn it into reality is because they get all this feedback from people. They go, got this idea, what do you think? And they go, oh, well, yeah, that's really good, and I really like that bit, and I really don't like that bit.
But how do you get in front of people?
How do you get in front of people? Okay, that's a really good, I suppose that's a really practical step. LinkedIn, like, that's a great way of suddenly putting yourself in front of people who previously, years ago, well, not even years ago, like before LinkedIn existed, you wouldn't have even known the names, let alone had this tool that gives you the ability to send them a message directly. But I think you've got to do it in a human way. Like, I received so many LinkedIn messages, and like after probably the first 2 words, I know that this is some guy trying to sell me something. Like, you're not trying to sell anyone anything. You're just trying to get a conversation.
And so is this what you're doing? You're connecting with people on LinkedIn? Are you putting stuff out on LinkedIn as well to your audience? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if just focusing on LinkedIn, I think the way to get conversations is say, got this idea, totally open about it, don't need to hide it, don't worry about people copying you. Can I speak to anyone in this industry? Is there any customers? Is there any partners? Like, I just need somebody to help me understand if what I'm trying to do is a good idea or a bad idea. And I guarantee you'll get people, because people in the industry will be interested. People, even competitors or competitors that you see as competitors, they might even not know that you're about to become a competitor. So, you know, they'll just be intrigued. Well, this guy is trying to start something up in this space. You'll also get people that say, you know, it's not possible, can't be done. And you've kind of got to listen to them as well, because they might say something that they think can't be done. You didn't even know was a problem. So, you know, suddenly you could get this whole different perspective on things. In a nutshell, it's like, just ask people for help, or ask people their opinion. But whatever you do, don't try and sell anything. You don't know whether you're selling the right thing, and people are immediately turned off by that idea that someone's trying to sell to them.
That's for advice.
Number 1 is like, tell everyone about your idea, you know. Tell the world.
And that, you know, again, lots of people I speak to, and me, when we met in early days of running a business, that is uncomfortable. And it does feel like there's a risk that people are going to steal your idea. But I think the reality is, you know, when we spoke to big corporates about the idea that we had, if they're in the adjacent space, they're big corporates, so they don't have the time and the innovation or the speed to actually go and copy you. And then the smaller businesses, they've got their own stuff to deal with. They're not suddenly in a place to suddenly pivot and copy what you're doing, your unvalidated idea. So I do think kind of shout it far and wide is really good advice.
Yeah, I agree. And the world is never going to find out about your idea if you keep it to yourself, right? At some point, you're going to have to go out and sell this thing.
You have to do it,
So, you know, you may as well start now. So number 2, I think, ask for help. Like, don't try and sell anything. Just ask for help.
You know, that's good advice throughout your startup journey, right? Like, continually ask for help, continually ask questions. People are far more willing to help you than maybe you think at the start of the journey. Very
recently, since leaving Mina, I've had an idea for a business in conveyancing, and I put a post on LinkedIn and I said, no real specifics around what we wanted to do in conveyancing. I said, I just got an idea, build a business in the conveyancing space. I want to speak to anybody in the space, customers, people working in the space. I just want to have some conversations. And I was inundated because people are interested. People that probably don't even know they're your competitors or could be your competitors will reach out and say, oh yeah, I'm in the space, let's have a chat.
Or you can't do that. Or,
exactly. People tell you they can't do it, and that will probably give you an idea to solve a problem you didn't even know existed.
It's really like, it's good validation either way, isn't it? People saying you can't do it.
So I think maybe number 3 is on this idea of direct message people who you want to speak to. If you direct message someone saying, I've got a product, can I try and sell it to you? What's going to happen? They're just going to shut down immediately.
And I think, you know, one of the things with LinkedIn is it's a really good way of stepping into an industry that you don't know, which often happens. You know, quite often people founding businesses don't necessarily know that the industry that they're in. They might have taken ideas from a parallel industry or an industry that they know well. I think if you can kind of DM people and connect and start to get a sense of what their community is and what their industry is, it's a really good way for understanding then who the most influential people are that you then need to kind of go and connect with and have conversations with.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a good point, actually. It's like, maybe that's a fourth point. It's once you've identified somebody you think's influential, look at who they're connected with.
Yes.
Because it's almost like a breadcrumb trail. Like, you find one person and then they lead to the next.
Yeah.
If one influential person actually connects with you and becomes part of your network, the next person you want to speak to, they go, oh, they're friends with that person.
They're already connected with this person, yeah.
And you may never even spoke to them, right?
Yeah.
They just go, oh, well, they must be relevant. They must be, must be something worth talking to these people about.
I remember this early stage of Mina, and you were already pretty well connected in that industry, and you're having those conversations, and you're kind of building your network, and you're getting visibility, and you're getting lots of feedback. How do you go from that to actually either, I suppose, finding the problem or validating the problem that you want to solve?
Good question, yes. Because one of the risks in speaking to lots of people is they'll just be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll say, oh yeah, of course I'd pay for this if you can solve this.
Yeah, if they're in a rush or they haven't got enough time, they'll just be, probably just want to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, to get rid, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of partly your job to try and drive that out of them,
Yes.
like ask them the questions like, what do you not like about this? Or have you heard of anything like this before that's not worked? And they'll give you insight, like they'll have been sold a solution that's trying to solve the same problem.
Yes.
And you've got to try and understand why that didn't work. Because, and maybe this goes back to an earlier point, like you will not be the first person to come up with this idea.
No.
Like there's no idea on the planet that only one person has ever thought of.
Yeah.
Like, millions of people will be thinking of these ideas, and it's just those who are choosing to go and execute them.
Yes. So there's quite a lot of kind of psychology, and like I think founders who are good at reading people and good at understanding people have an advantage at this stage, right? Because they're able to, they can kind of see through whether people are just being nice to get them, so they can move on to the next meeting, whether it's a real problem that they're willing to actually part money with. Yes. And the rest of the process of validation starts to kind of poke holes at whether this is something people are going to pay for, and maybe we can talk about that in a little bit in terms of how you produce something so that someone will part cash and yet you've not built something that's taken you months and months and months. But there's a big kind of psychological part to this early stage, right?
Absolutely. It's like, maybe it's like dating. I'm absolutely no expert on this at all, right? But like, you've kind of got to build that relationship and warm up, and you've got to show that person that you've asked for help from, that you've now hopefully got on a call or even meeting in person, that you're a genuine person. And the more genuine you are, and the more, I guess, just authentic you are with that person, they will just naturally share stuff. And it's really difficult to explain in like a step-by-step process how to do this. But I can tell you, just don't try and sell anything. Because the minute you try and sell something, they'll just shut down.
You erode the trust, don't you? Yeah, and I do think you can, you build up your network, you build up the kind of positive sentiment around you because you're asking questions and you want to help and you want to solve a problem. And then you kind of go away for a bit, and then at the point where you come back with a solution, I think those people are far more likely to entertain it rather than if they've never heard of you before and you kind of pick up the phone and say, I've solved this problem, do you want to buy it?
Yes.
And it also helps your brand, whether that's your personal brand as a founder or whether that's the brand of the business. People being familiar with your name and being familiar with your brand and talking to other people. I spoke to these people who are trying to solve that problem. At the point where you want people to part with cash is so helpful because you're not an unknown quantity. You're someone who's already in the industry and already reasonably well known. We've
spoke to all these people. We've hopefully validated that it's a real problem, or maybe we've pivoted slightly and come up with a better idea.
Yep.
But now what? What do we do now?
Yeah, and I think this is the hard bit, right? Like, you've got this idea of an MVP, right? Okay. You've gone out there, you've spoken to people, you know it's a real problem. You need to go and build something because you need something for people to pay for.
Got it. So build an MVP.
Build an MVP, but I think one of the things about the word MVP is means all things to all men. Like very lots and lots of different definitions of what a minimum viable product would be. I would always say, if you can build something that is mainly a manual process, if you can build something that uses third-party tools to kind of fulfill most of it. So, for example, when we started Mina, we used lots of things like Typeform and other kind of off-the-shelf kind of software products. Now, I suspect a lot of this is AI and Lovable and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
But if you can rely on manual process in the background, it's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain thing, right? Like it looks great from the front. Maybe there's something a bit more polished that's how your customers interact with your product, but behind the scenes it's pretty manual.
Yeah. So how manual? How manual you say?
I think it can be entirely manual potentially. It depends on the product and the sector and those kind of things. But people do like to buy from people, and you can start with a product that is fairly service heavy, that relies on you picking up the phone to people, and that's helpful, right? Because you can do it quickly, but also it's helpful because you know your customers inside out. You know the problems, you know their challenges. You're fulfilling this stuff manually. I mean, I talk about this a lot for Mina again, the business that we built together. Actually, what I realised probably too late is the product that people were buying from us, fleet managers doing kind of EV charging, was an invoice, and an invoice can be created in a Google Doc and sent via a PDF, and it can be completely manual. But that's the thing they didn't have. They didn't have one single invoice to pay for all their charging. They had lots and lots of manual processes to calculate cost, and then lots and lots of separate payments.
Yeah.
And I think if we'd have thought about that at the beginning, we could have gone, yeah, here's your invoice, and not built anything at all, and just run the thing completely manually.
Yeah. And I guess by creating a manual process, it allows you to deliver value and get to that paying customer really very quickly, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like people talk AI tools, we are the best AI tool. Yeah. Like the human being can produce, not at scale, but you've got one customer, or even 10 customers. You can do it on a notepad or a whiteboard.
Yeah.
You can do that now. Like you don't have to build a CRM and wait weeks for a website or whatever it is.
And if you speak to people and you get goodwill and they like the idea that you're building. Once they pay for it, there's a little less goodwill because they're paying you for a service, right? Their expectations are higher. It's fine saying, yeah, that sounds great, I'd definitely pay for that. But at a point where they actually give you card details or you invoice them and they're paying for your product, the true colours come out and they will give you much more honest feedback because they're paying for a service. So they expect that service to deliver what they thought it would deliver when you kind of sold it to them. And it's that feedback that's essential.
Yes.
Because it's that feedback that can shape your product, because this is what people who are actually paying want.
Yes. So really, the build an MVP, once you've got this manual process, the next step is to sell that MVP, right?
Yeah, build it and sell it. But in my experience, keep it as narrow as possible.
Okay.
Sometimes so narrow that you kind of are wondering why you're even trying to solve that problem. But it has to be a problem that lots of people have. You can't just solve a problem for one person. But you need to solve a problem where there's enough of an audience where you can get some sales, but you're just focusing on the value that doesn't exist elsewhere in the market.
Can we think of any examples of this then? Is there an example?
Yes. Etsy, I think, is a really good example. So Etsy is an e-commerce kind of marketplace for mainly craftspeople. I think have made themselves. It would seem odd that their MVP was that they weren't a marketplace, but that's where they started. They started on eBay.
Yeah.
They didn't have any of the marketplace stuff. They didn't have any of the checkout stuff. They just were testing the idea that people will buy homemade, kind of crafty, kind of products. And once you validate that, then you can go and invest in building your own tech to actually have all of these shops on, have the payment tech and all those kind of things. But it feels counterintuitive. It's a marketplace, so how do you test it? Well, you test it by not building a marketplace.
Yes.
But it means they didn't build anything, and they can understand what products people want. They can understand whether people who are making this stuff actually want to sell it. You know, there's lots of assumptions in the aspiration that they have that they're able to validate without building anything at all.
Yes.
And I think I like the idea of, you know, you've told this to me before, but I think it's good to share. It's like how you started Split the Bills when you were running Fit Property.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I think that if we go back a little bit, it was like, well, we thought there was pain. So Fit Property was a student-focused lettings business.
Yep.
We, as property managers, if you like, felt the pain of students not paying the bills. So we thought, well, can we solve that problem by paying the bills for them? And we didn't really build an MVP, right, to prove this. Or maybe this is the MVP, but the MVP was a sandwich board that we put outside our office, which was outside the university, saying students will pay your bills, any property, with an arrow pointing to the office, basically. Come and talk to us. And I remember students walking to the office and they say, well, like, we've seen this board, you know, what is it? And even we didn't really know what it was. Like, we'd only written it like half an hour ago. So we were like, we made it up, right? We said, well, what we'll do is we'll pay your bills and you pay us, and and then you don't have to fall out about them.
Yeah.
And it was kind of almost we were developing the MVP in a conversation with our customers.
Yes.
And
then the processes behind that, I'm assuming, were completely manual, like in terms of how you manage all of that stuff.
I mean, I remember one of them saying, so how do we pay you? And we hadn't even thought about this, right? We were like, we'll just, and this was a few years ago, right? So we said, well, just what you do is you bring some cash in every week. And we had this big whiteboard with names of people, you know, probably a GDPR disaster now, and we just tick it off when they paid, you know. So thank God, you know, if the cleaner wipes that whiteboard, we were doomed. But when you go back to this idea of make a manual process and keep it narrow, I don't think it could have been more manual than what we created. It was a few names on a whiteboard, and it was super narrow. You know, and when I say super narrow, there were bills that we could have paid that we didn't, right? We started out with purely gas, electric, water. Right. You needed broadband, but we didn't know how we were going to deliver that. No. There's this idea of council tax. Students don't pay council tax, but like we could notify the council, and we were like, you know what, let's not get into that. Like, we know how to pay gas, electric, water. Let's do that.
Yeah, and then as you fulfil that product, as you sell it, no doubt the noise around certain things becomes louder and louder, and then eventually you go, right, we've got to solve the broadband problem now, because that's what we get most feedback on, or we've got to solve the council tax problem. Yeah. But you're using real feedback to decide what to do next.
Absolutely. And maybe the opposite of this is, I think at one point we decided we were going to sell insurance. Like, so we got too carried away too soon. Yeah. Like, so this MVP then turned into this was like the maximum viable product, maybe. Yeah. You know, big mistake, because then you get totally sidetracked with stuff that's not making any money and people don't value.
But yeah, I think it's about how do you fake the product? How do you deliver that product in a way? Maybe we'll write that down. That feels real to the customer. Yeah. But is not built in the background, because that's the easiest thing to do is to just get so invested in this polished thing that you're going to deliver in a few weeks or a few months that you almost don't want to hear the feedback, because you want to go with the thing that you think is the solution. But the amount of time and the amount of money and energy that would have been saved for a lot of people by just trying to fake what they want to deliver early days is huge, and it often is the difference between a business being successful and failing.
And another way of maybe talking about this fake the product, I think, is this idea that it's good enough.
Yes.
And you don't need it to be perfect.
No, and we definitely had that dynamic at Mina, right? And Andy still talks about the idea that I guess he's a recovering perfectionist because I kind of pushed him so hard to put stuff out there that he wasn't comfortable with. Yes. But one of your only advantages when you start a business is speed. Mm-hmm. It's not money, and it's not market knowledge, and there's lots of things that other people do better than you in more established businesses, but the one thing you can do better than anyone else is move quickly. Yeah. And so don't shoot yourself in the foot by being a perfectionist and not deploying or not putting that thing out into the world.
Yes, absolutely. And if we had to put, and I suppose this does depend on the industry, right? So
Yeah,
if you make it, I don't know, biotech, which we've looked at recently, you can't really fake that and start injecting people with stuff that isn't proven. But
ideally, no.
Put biotech to one side, right? Other than that industry, there's probably no other business that you can't make an arrow product, fake it, and get to market quickly, right?
I think hardware is difficult, and I'm increasingly speaking to more and more hardware startups. It is more challenging. I think there's still ways of shortening that development cycle. So, when we were in the EV charging industry, we knew that certain EV chargers were basically powered by a Raspberry Pi, an off-the-shelf small computer that they just literally kind of shoved in there. And why not? Because that technology exists, so why engineer it from scratch? And eventually that gets replaced, and in later versions they've got their own tech. I'm working with someone who's kind of doing a lot of work in heat pumps, and he's seeing what he can get off the shelf from China and build, and then add on his kind of custom secret sauce on top of it. But the ingestion periods are a lot longer in hardware because you've got to go and produce it and test it. But you can still do all of the stuff we talked about earlier in terms of going out to people in the industry and asking questions and asking for advice.
Yes.
And maybe your validation is more in people willing to do proof of concept trials with you, or letters of intent, or even grants and grant awards. It's all helpful validation to know that you're going in the right direction.
So really that probably is summed up in like speed, and speed seems to vary depending on the product you're selling, but
yes,
you probably got to ask yourself all the time, like, can I make this simpler, faster? Like, how can I get this thing into the market?
Yeah, I like asking people, if you had 2 weeks to solve it, what would it look like?
Yes, okay.
Because most of the time that does solve a significant enough part of the problem that you're close to being good to go.
Yes.
Like if you had a gun to your head and you've got 2 weeks to do it, that's the kind of level of solution that I think you should be starting to put out to the world.
Yeah, that's a really good bit of advice, right? Isn't it? If you go into it with that deadline of this has got to be in the market by this date. Okay. So we've got this MVP.
Yeah.
Now what do we do with it?
You need to sell it.
Sell it. Yeah.
And I think there can be a temptation of, if I give it away for free, I'll get some more people signed up. I'll get feedback. They'll be using it. And I'm sure in some instances you could justify that. I think maybe that's okay to do. But what you miss out on is the jeopardy of the fact that, the person who's actually paying, even if whether it's their own money, whether it's their business's money, if they're giving you money for a product or a service, they will think very differently about it than if you give it to them for free.
Yeah.
And so the feedback you get will be more brutal and it'll be more honest, but it will also be more useful for the future of the product that you're building.
So sell it for money. Don't give
money.
it away for free.
Yeah.
Incredibly good advice, I think, because psychologically you almost don't care if it's good or bad if you get it for free, right? Because you're just like, well, it's free. Maybe don't expect it to be good. If you're paying for it,
your standards are lower. Yeah. And it was, some of the very early customers at Mina, without naming names, were the toughest. They were really difficult, and they this wasn't big corporates. This was SMEs, but they were paying money for this product, and they'd be damned if it didn't do what we said it would do when we sold it to them. And there's nothing like being on the phone to an angry customer to make you go, okay, we need to sort this out.
Absolutely. And I think the other way, it's always psychology on yourself, because if you're giving something away for free, you can almost say, well, what do they expect? It's free.
Yeah, you can justify substandard, or you can justify that it's not quite doing what it said it would. Yeah, 100%.
How do you sell it? Then how do you put that, because we've got this MVP, right? So this is probably far away from the dream that you set out when you started this business. And I see this all the time, and I felt that you have this vision and you think, great, we'll be up and running in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever, I'm going to sell this thing. And then you get in front of the customer and behind the scenes that it's held together with sticky tape and a bit of blue tag.
But I think this is where you can kind of play on the goodwill that you had before from, the process of going out to that market or industry and putting yourself out there and saying, I've got an idea, and getting feedback or give me advice. When you then have something that you've built and you go in front of them and say, I've got our first version of this product. Are you willing to actually pay money for it? One, it's a good validation test, right? They told you they'd buy it. Will they actually buy it?
Yeah.
But I think you've built a bit of goodwill. You're not going in saying, this is perfect, this is going to be the most polished thing you've ever seen. They know you. They know that you've only just started building that product. And I think this is where the talking about things and being open and honest at the beginning pays back. Because yes, they may buy it, and yes, their expectations are that you've just built it. So they know that it's not going to be kind of IBM or Apple level of kind of product execution.
Yeah, so it's, I suppose, be honest then, isn't it? Like, be honest and be genuine. But even though it might not be Apple and IBM, if it solves the problem in a way that's better than, well, I guess what it would be if this thing didn't exist.
Yes, and I think this is where that kind of hustle culture becomes quite negative. You know, this idea that once you've built something, you've got to pretend it's the best thing in the world. I think a bit of openness, a bit of honesty, a bit of trading on the relationships hopefully you've already built is important.
Yes.
You know, if you've got paying customers or people are in the sales cycle and they're telling you, oh, we just need this feature or that feature, or can you build this, can you build that? That can be a bit dangerous, because you can end up building stuff for specific customers that aren't real issues. So there's this process of listening and understanding and continuing to speak to your customers, but also there is you have to be careful about kind of not customizing products or services just for early adopters.
Yes. Yeah. So it's like listen. It's like almost listen to what their pain is.
Yeah.
But they don't always know the solution. You know, and maybe there's the cliche phrase, you know, if you'd asked the customer what they wanted, they said a faster horse. Yeah. So they know the pain is they want to go faster.
Yes.
But they don't necessarily know how they want to go faster. We've now got a business, real business, hopefully, because we are generating real revenue.
Yeah.
But we have a product that's falling apart.
Yes.
Or not falling apart, but probably can't scale.
Yes.
So how do we go from this MVP that's generating revenue to a product we can sell to potentially hundreds, thousands, and millions of people?
And it's a real challenge, because I think that there's a shortcoming with MVPs, right? Which is you put them out into the world. They are the smallest thing that you could achieve to try and solve the problem. And then people start paying money. And then there's a real temptation to go, well, that's good. Let's leave that, because people are paying for it. And then let's look at the next problem. We can build another feature, another product alongside it that solves another problem. People might pay even more.
Yep.
So I think one of the things, though, is to make sure that that the MVP isn't the end, and that happens more often than I think you care to think. That people stick with the MVP, and then the technical debt grows, and a year down the line, you're still kind of doing things in the same manual way in the background. So I think it's important to be quite obsessive about scale and say, okay, here's our MVP. What would that look like with 10, 100, 1,000 times the number of users using the product, and start to tackle those things early and optimize those things as early as you can. But with a note of caution, like I remember saying, the reality of a startup business is one team is always going to be in some amount of pain. Because if everyone's happy, if everyone's plain sailing, then it means that you're not going fast enough, you're not growing, you're not executing as rapidly as you should be doing. And so if your operations team are happy and your engineering team are quite chill, and then your sales team should be really panicking, and they should be really up against it. And then when they deliver, and when they push harder and they deliver a load of sales, then your operations team will be screaming until your engineers start to automate some stuff. But so part of running a startup business is managing that pain across the different departments, the different teams, and making sure that you're not letting anyone be hung out to dry for any long period, but you're not over-engineering anything, and no one's left in a place where they're really complacent. Yeah,
that's a good phrase, isn't it? It's like managing pain, managing internal pain. Because I think wherever the pain is, that's the area that you need to focus on. Scale. You know?
And as those who are in it day to day will focus on their problems today. If you're a business leader, if you're running a business, your job is to look at that, But your job is also to have a very clear view as to where the pain is going to come from in the future as you scale.
Yes.
And making sure that you're kind of navigating and helping everyone to navigate to ensure that you don't ever get to the point where the business can't scale.
Absolutely. So maybe we could just touch on, so I know that we want to purely talk today about getting to that revenue, which we've got to now, right? And you could do that without investment.
Especially if you're not hardware, especially, this is why the sweet spot of investment is B2B SaaS, because if it's software as a service, you can build software relatively low cost, especially if you're a technical founder. B2B sales are one to many. You can get one contract and you might have 1,000 users. So certainly in that industry, I think there's a lot you can do without raising money. It's also a good challenge for you to set yourself, isn't it, to say how much of this can I do for free? How much of this can I do without paying any money?
This idea of revenue before investment, it really ensures that you focus on what really matters.
Yeah.
Like the minute you get any money, if you put enough effort into raising money for an idea, you'll probably raise some money.
Yes.
But you could spend all that money very quickly on solving totally the wrong problem. Then you get to market and nobody wants to buy it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to come back from that, right?
Yeah.
Because then you've got to go and raise more money.
And that's a hard story to tell. Why do you need this again? Why are you pivoting? Yeah.
And it's just human nature to, I don't know if it's human nature, but maybe it's just maybe a learnt behaviour, right? You've got money in the bank. Well, I should spend it then. I should put it to good use. But you don't know what good use is.
No. At Trove, we talk about this idea of an investable MVP.
That's a good phrase. Yeah.
And what we mean by that is a few different things. So yes, that could be you've got an MVP that's strong enough that you can sit in front of angel investors and they'll part with their cash. But actually, much earlier than that, an investable MVP might be, I've got a day job and I'm doing evenings and weekends building this thing, trying to solve this problem. How do I know it's ready for me to invest in myself? How do I know I can commit fully to this? Because I think that's more the reality for most startup founders, is that they're navigating going from a kind of a day job and doing kind of this stuff evenings and weekends to how do I do this full time, or how do I justify putting my own savings into this product or proposition. And I think that gets lost sometimes. We talk so much about validation and traction with startups.
Yeah.
But the main person who needs that validation is the founder.
Yes.
Because they should be looking for it every day, every week. Everything they do should be them saying, is this telling me that this is a real product that's gonna sell? Because it's very easy to get bought into the idea that I'm going to go start a business and I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to be successful, I'm going to grow. You may only be able to do that once. So you have to be really sure that the problem that you're solving is a real one that people will pay money for to solve.
That's good advice, isn't it? Because I think, it's very easy to prove anything on a spreadsheet as well, isn't it? Like, and you get very excited about this business, it's definitely going to work, I'm going to quit my job. Yeah. And then it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's very easy for people to say, yeah, definitely pay for that. Yeah, of course. And then at the point where you put an invoice in front of them or you put a check out in front of them, they go, oh, well, maybe not so much. Maybe I can live with what my current solution.
So just to kind of wrap up this video then, if you're a founder listening to this video for the first time or want to become a founder, and you go right back to the beginning, what are the key things, what are the key messages you want to go away with?
So I think number one is what I learnt from you, this idea of talking about it, sharing it early, going out there, and I think the network that you build at the beginning is one of the most important things. And don't be afraid to share, but asking questions. Don't say I want to sell something to you, but ask those kind of questions. Yeah. I think then when you go and build something, build the smallest thing you can. And, how do you fake the product? Or, how do you solve this product in 2 weeks? And we've not really talked about AI and things like that, but I mean, in the 5-6 years since we started Mina, the world is entirely different in terms of what you can build in 2 weeks. It is magnitudes different now than when we started that business.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think maybe people haven't tried what you're talking about, even just open ChatGPT and just say, I've got this idea for a business.
Yes.
This is what it is. Like, Does anyone else doing it even? That's a good place to
100%.
start,
Charge from day one if you can.
Charge real money. Yeah.
And suddenly you've created a real business at the point someone sends you actual cash, or once you charge someone's credit card or send them an invoice. You can charge people for things that are relatively manual. You're charging them to solve their problem.
Yes.
You're not charging them for something very shiny and pretty. So solve the problem in a manual way wherever you can. Making sure that you're still delivering on the promise, but don't automate those things until you absolutely have to.
Yes. People actually don't care about your product. They just want the end result.
They want the problem solved. Yeah.
They don't really care about how you go about doing it.
And then I suppose at 5 is this idea of you got to listen to people. You got to listen to people as they're buying for your product, and you have to be very careful about what you solve next. It's tempting to build an MVP to move on and never revisit it. It's tempting to build every feature that every customer wants. It's tempting to make sure that your team are never in pain and everyone's okay. But actually, the reality is navigating that point from MVP into a more scalable product.
Yes.
is a skill in itself, and it's a complicated process. But the main thing is you got to listen to your customers.
And I think maybe the 6 that you kind of mentioned there really is listen to the customers, but stay focused.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you've got any questions about anything we spoke about today, please add them to the comments. And if you like this conversation, please subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more people we can help, and the more we can speak to people like Chris.